The results of AMC will be made public, and it seems that you have confirmed this rally. The Nasdaq has been confirmed, and right now, it's rising. Although the Fed verified it today, final Fed approval is still required. Jerome Powell will deliver a speech tomorrow morning. This will be a significant catalyst prior to 2 AMC's results. In this video, we'll talk about the data, my forecasts for AMC's stock earnings, and my projection for the stock's future course. Subscribe, like, and share. Since it's free, feel free to share your ideas, questions, or concerns. Kindly post a remark below. It should help get the news out to as many people as possible who need to hear it, and it doesn't cost you anything. So, let's begin by discussing the current state of the markets. It's easy. The Fed speakers are the main focus. It was all about that. One bond auction was held. The bond auction lasted for 3 years. Nothing emerged from it. It essentially followed the expectations. Therefore, if nothing went wrong, that was intrinsically positive. Those bond auctions were either good or disastrous. These days, that's merely viewed favorably. Fed Khashoggi was the only one who seemed a touch less hopeful about inflation declining and more in favor of possibly looser Fed policy. He simply stated that we may need to hike again and that we cannot declare that we have defeated inflation. It's that a month ago, this would have been considered perfectly normal. What he stated, markets did, in fact, respond somewhat to that in the prior pre-market. We now have Fed Ames and some of the other Fed speakers. He is the one who truly ignited a lot of this event, as I mentioned in the last video. He claims that without a recession, there is a golden path for a significant decline in inflation that is comparable to Fed Gosby restating good news and your gentle landing story. It doesn't matter that other Fed speakers have expressed a lot of optimism. Those individuals are irrelevant. Let's face it. Who is important? Mr. Jerome Powell will speak. Tomorrow at 10:15 a.m., it's unclear if he will discuss policies or provide fresh information. I assume the other Fed speakers we've heard so far would have told us if Powell had planned to give us a significant shift. Usually, they just inform the markets of good or bad news when they feel like hitting them. Powell won't be negative tomorrow, in my opinion. It will be important to observe whether Poe awoke with a clear head and spoke to the markets regarding AMC stock and the Nasdaq. The Nasdaq hasn't been that bad lately and is moving quite vertically. Went from down here between the lowest spots, 341 and 372. The QQQ has climbed by 30% and 10% since your October 26th lows. It's been a crazy rally. As of yet, you are neither overbought nor oversold. I believe that at some time, we will trade sideways based on the RSI, but take note of how your downtrending line of resistance, which links 1, 2, 3, and 4 separate hits, confirms the bounce we saw today. Since you carried out the exact same activity yesterday, technically there were 5 unique touches. As you can see from the bottom end, you came down at the beginning of the trade wick after climbing straight over that level today. Following a real penny-to-penny bounce off that line, you moved higher and discovered that to be support. It was time to head to the races. This is the clearest sign that prices on the Nasdaq are about to rise. Therefore, especially in light of this, you shouldn't be betting against their markets at this time. If you were a bear, you would prefer that the Nasdaq be rejected here and fall instead of rising above that line. The bulls are coming for you, so you had better exercise caution. I don't think that AMC's profitability will be much impacted by what we've seen today, nor do I think that either good or bad outcomes are unavoidable. No one knows, really. The EP's projections were 83 months ago. They are negative 255 today. Revenue estimates vary between $1.25 billion and $1.3 billion. $1.15 billion is the bottom end. Therefore, you will be all right as long as you fall within $1.25 billion and $1.3 billion. It will basically come down to the EPS figures and the assumption of a negative to 255 still loss. But anything below or over that will be good. Additionally, we made a net profit of almost $8 million 2 quarters ago. Is it possible for AMC to pull a rabbit out? If they could do that, it would help us reach a net profit this quarter. There aren't many positive factors built into AMC stock already, especially after this nearly 7% decline. In theory, the stock is likely to rise significantly just after earnings for the remainder of this week. If not, I believe the stock is priced for a really poor conclusion. Decrease your witnessing right now. Anyone who is afraid, and made their way to earnings, well, they left their jobs today pretty much immediately. Since it was just red candle after red candle and they weren't tiny, I believe you've just witnessed a lot of aggressive shorting more than anything else. These were about 1.5–2% 1-minute candles after all. In other words, you essentially just went down vertically. The seller shorts basically began to pile onto those positions, and after that, you kind of bounced and kept trending lower. Thus, once more, you will be receiving some data from China tomorrow evening. At approximately 9:30 p.m., however, Fed and the poll will once again be the key issue, and I believe it will be straightforward. Is Powell optimistic? Is Powell pessimistic? Stocks are rising. If Powell confirms this rally and bond rates decline, indicating that he is bullish and comfortable with what the markets are doing. If Powell does not confirm this rally and says anything that the markets find objectionable, stocks are rising. The markets may still drop from this point. Therefore, it is not a given that equities would simply perform well from this point on. No, you must have Powell attest to it. The technicals we've seen today, in my opinion, are highly encouraging of what might be a very supporting Fed Jerome Powell to our markets as well. However, that is by no means a given. Therefore, make your own decisions and do your homework on everything you plan to invest in. Don't trade or invest in anything if you don't understand risk management strategies. Consult with a financial advisor. Let's examine this stock tracking information. Now, because I'm not an expert, don't listen to me if you have any questions concerning any of this. I do think there is a risk for a gamma squeeze if we did have excellent earnings this week. You currently have about 11,000 calls in the money. The amount of 74,000, 73,500, and 8,000 is called out, and the amount of 31,500 is put out. Let's examine some of the choice activity that AMC is displaying. Just beyond the money, there's a fair lot of call action going on. After the $13 call, you have roughly 5,000, 7,000, 3,000, and then $5,000. You might see a lot of momentum upward from there if you can get above. Or 2, that $13 call. Remember that a few days ago, we were just in the $11 range. In any case, $13 is not all that far off, and I believe that's where we're going. Don't exchange that, of course, but it's just my view. As for the option activity, you have observed orders with a positive order value of 25%. That total almost $100,000 today. This stock is among the most bullish, if not the most bullish, in terms of option activity at the moment, as indicated by the put-to-call ratio, which is 0.66. Nothing is more optimistic than that. Additionally, it seems that the data in this video is nearly identical to that in the previous one. You have a 6.54% short interest rate off free float. With days to cover of about 0.64 million shares, there are 139 million short positions. 13 million shares were sold short at a 15.57% borrowing cost, a short score of 51, and a utilization of 1.32. I don't really think there is much more to say about this. Please use the comment section below to express your opinions. Do you have a negative or positive outlook? Personally, I think that as long as Federer Paulo doesn't enter the market and seriously hurt it, or as long as AMC's profits aren't so poor that, if you're an AMC, you'll have to have some terrible earnings to see the stock drop. In the grand scheme of things, AMC's stock is still trading near its January 2021 lows, when it was practically priced for bankruptcy. What do you think the current price is? Okay, dilution is an additional risk. These are my thoughts, but since dilution is a wild card, you never know what AMC may say. A solid earnings report could push AMC's shares into the upper teens, possibly surpassing both the guidance and the statistics. If AMC turns a profit, you can see a pretty aggressive short squeeze based only on the fundamentals. Even if you're disguising your short position, you'll eventually need to cover it, even with a put. So we'll know when we know. It is unfortunate, in my opinion, that a lot of short sellers are currently hiding their short positions. Although I'm not sure why that came to me, that seems like a reasonable way to interpret it. There are many things happening behind the scenes that you are not aware of until a crisis arises, at which time you will realize they are aggressive.